Okay. I still think we have a couple of others that we'd like to wait for. Peter Simonson is going to join us. Peter has been, throughout this long process of development, one of our best alpha testers. And so I really would like to see him on. I'm going to see if I can send him a note. So I have a list, but I'm hoping that you guys could tell me what you want to see, and we can get right into the DRC as soon as we have. Yeah, we could jump into it right now. I think almost everybody's here. So a little bit of history. Scott, can you hear me, by the way? I didn't think Scott would be able to join us, but there he is.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, George.
Okay, great. So the little squiggly line to the right is going to become enabled. And what that is high quality audio. Okay, and I've got to turn it off here because I'm getting horrible feedback. High quality audio. This is a team that's been in codec development for some time. And I've used their codec back, or the beginnings of their codec back in the DTS era. It's pretty good. But I'm playing in 96K, and I can't really say that it's doing a good sample rate conversion. So we'll see more as we go along. Where to start?
For me, the echo is back. Am I the only one?
I'm sorry, say again, Andres?
I just turned Andre's channel down, and it goes away.
I hear. I did nothing. I can see everybody. I can hear everybody.
Am I the only one hearing a lot of echo?
I'm hearing a pretty good echo.
Yeah, I mean, I see it on Andre's fader for whatever reason. I mean,
echo has been a problem.
I'm getting it too.
So let's troubleshoot this for a minute. If Andreas, you have something coming through your high quality audio channel, and I'm going to suggest that you turn that off until we play music.
I wonder if we all muted if that would help.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I'm just figuring this out, but it seems like we all have our own individual control over the fader of everyone. So,
you do.
So it seems like if I just drag on the right arrow fader down on Andreas and Scott, for whatever reason, yeah, like you said, George, the high quality audio is like looping back through.
Yeah, it is.
But it seems to just go away if I mute that part, and I can still hear their mics individually.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
So good
for that tip.
Now you can select what goes to your high quality audio in the little widget at the bottom that says HQ audio, and I am. Yeah.
So it should probably be no input for everyone except you, I guess.
Well, that would make me feel very special. Again, I apologize for any issues we might have with. Gosh, every time I click on the little wiggle, it erases the recording. You know, they've got some things that they need to work out. Let's leave it at that. Okay, Andreas, we're getting that dub looping through your channel.
What do I have to
mute your mic?
I would mute in between.
Where can I mute my mic?
Okay, you open your mixer at that thing at the bottom. Your mixer has everybody's mic and high quality audio feed. And I just have to mute here as well.
Okay, I mute my mixer, no problem.
Okay, great. And I've turned down everything here, so we should be in good shape. So if you have something that's urgent to add, by all means, unmute.
Scott, can you try muting also?
Sure.
Scott, I thought you weren't going to be able to make it.
Oh, no, I was able to come. I just was hoping to sleep in on my day off. That's all.
You have a day off?
Problem.
Amazing.
Yeah, only because it's my birthday. So, but
Happy birthday. We'll spare you a birthday song.
yeah, thank you, please.
Although it has come out of copyright now. We can sing it
Yeah.
without paying the
Okay.
Disney
So
copyright.
you're asking me to mute my mic. Is that correct?
Well, in between,
My audio. Okay.
to
Gotcha.
make sure that we're not interrupted by a lot of echo.
Awesome.
And I've got this little squelch thing down, and I'm hoping it'll work. Where to start? GearSpace has always been a great assist in the release of this plug. My business partner insisted, Jim Pace, still a dear friend, good friend, dear friend, said you can't release this without a manual and without some marketing and without support. And we did. We put it up on GearSpace, and we not only got a wall of shit for releasing something with weird controls that weren't really well described. And you guys figured it out. Many of you guys figured it out. And one guy, John England, not only figured it out, but he wrote his own manual and sent me a copy, and I used big parts of it. He's very good, and I'm very grateful. But we've gotten the best feedback, and so I'm not here to tell you how to work the thing, because I think most of you guys know, but to give you a little more insight into some of the more mysterious parts of it. One of the things on my list was try to make it clear what the two sections are, if that might require a quick dive. So if we look at the thing, I think I can dial the thing up here. If we look at the expanded, I'm not going to play this, but if we look at the expanded DRC, we have a what you're used to seeing, which is the DRC, basic, what we call the discrete. And I've got it set up so I can also show you the loudness. And the point I want to stress for those who don't know it yet, because I'm sure most of you have figured it out, that if you move between, if you can see this move between discrete and loudness, you're really exclusively using this detector. If you're moving to discrete, you're exclusively using this detector. And the advantage of this is more relevant in immersive. And for those of you who do immersive, this is the thing that allows you to adjust your loudness for the middle of the room, is the easiest way to put it. And you'll see that work if you have this working as an immersive plug in 2-channel. And I'll demonstrate that in a minute, because what we want you to look at is for 2-channel for mastering and other 2-channel work, you'll use loudness, because you would like the image to stay in the center, and loudness retains the center, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. So have I confused you so far, or everybody got it? You want to get more of a explanation? And let me just add, for those of you that have the multi-channel, and I don't have it here because I don't have a multi-channel. I guess I've got a 5.1 stem that I could put on. But for multi-channel, it's not only effective, it's mandatory that you have that option of loudness on your stems, on your master, on your subs. And if you don't want full loudness, you can go to the loudness control and dial it back, dial the effect back. Discrete in immersive would be 16 different detectors, all operating independently. It's plenty loud. It pushes everything up to the max. It's not useful if you want to have anything that retains its center, that retains its image. However, a lot of my buddies are using this with just a little bit of discrete because it does make it louder. So with that out of the way, I've forgotten what else is on my list. Anybody want to remind me? But that's the key thing that's confusing. Here, I'll get my list up here. I just know it's right there at my fingertips. Not today. Give me a second. I'm going to look around, see if I can find this. Let's get out of that. Let's go to my mail. And I promise not to flounder too much. I'm trying to keep this open-ended, but I'd like to have some sense of continuity. Here it is. The preset menu. If nobody's got the preset menu yet, it's incredibly useful having all of the settings that you're working with available to go to other workstations. We've got a lot of cross workstation work, particularly people that use things like Reaper. Cubase is a big user of presets because we never saw a standard for keeping presets. Pro Tools is interesting, but they never really listened to users when we had good suggestions. One of the suggestions was a standardized preset they could move around. It generally stores everything in your Home Documents MDW preset folder, and that's documented. Hi, Peter. Good morning. I think I've already introduced you. For those of you who weren't here, Peter is my longtime friend, is in Denmark, and has helped develop a lot of our work right from the alpha stage. So he's incredibly tolerant of bugs, and he's seen them all. But he's our big Windows user feedback. He also keeps his eye open for cracks, and we appreciate that. So if you have any questions and want an objective answer and don't like my answer, ask Peter.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. At any rate, so presets are a way to save your work across your project, because maybe you want presets per song, and you would go into your Finder, into your menu, into your file system, and save that as save your preset as a particular song and name it. You can retain it, but it's because of the structure of Pro Tools, there's not much we can do to copy the name of the session.
George, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have an option on your computer to share your screen?
Yes, I do. I do it here. Hang on a sec. Let's go here. I'm going to go here and share the whole screen. Give me one sec here. So my screen is the Pro Tools session, and the two plugs is the whole screen, and everything becomes very small. But maybe that's not a problem. So what I'm going to do is turn on my screen and turn off these inserts. And it's a little bit of let's do this. Okay. That's my screen. Are you sure you really want to see it?
No, that's still appearing in a very small box for me. I was hoping that if you shared it, it would take over our screens.
If you click there's a little full screen icon.
I can share my whole screen. Absolutely. And if we need to zero in on something, we can zero in on something. So this is entire screen. And it is basically the same thing you saw before, but maybe it's a little higher resolution. That is my screen. I
kind of preferred it when it was just
screen. It's still starting my screen, and this could crash. It's still starting my screen. So do you see my screen? I don't know that you...
I see it. It's a lot bigger for me than it was a moment ago. So
okay, well, great. Well, let's leave that on. Let's just leave that on. So what I was going to head into was just to show you what I do on a lead vocal. And, we could do that or not. You decide.
Sounds good.
So what we'll do, I need to unshare again because I want to zero in on the, what is that command? I want to zero in on the DRC, and that's here. So here you go. And I'm going to hope this works. So I've got a lead vocal, and I'll play the lead vocal and see if the high quality stream works. I'm going to bypass it and then set it up. And this is one of my favorite artists and a record I did in Studio C many years ago, and it's still one of my favorites, and it didn't sell, if you must know.
Excuse me, I'm going to be a busybody again, but is anyone else still experiencing any echo? Because I was going to say, I muted both of Scott's channels on my screen here, and my echo went away. So if anyone was dealing with that, that might be helpful.
Okay, so do we think it's when Scott unmutes?
No, Scott is muted, but for some reason, I clicked both of the M's in his two, I guess the stereo and mono or whatever that stands for, and my echo went away.
Yeah, Scott's HQ audio is looping back for whatever reason. So if you mute the right mute, it seems to go away.
So one thing you could do, Scott, is just feed the so-called talkback channel from your mic and not do the HQ audio. Do the HQ audio from, what would you do it from? Just wire.
There's a no input option too that might be
for HQ audio. But yeah, before I start playing stuff, if you don't mind terribly, I'd like to play tone and make sure your HQ audio is turned on because it sounds like shit with the just the talkback channel. So I'm feeding HQ audio now. And I'll ask if everybody's getting HQ audio.
Yep.
Beautiful. All right. So here's what we're going to listen to. I'll turn that off. And here's the girl. I'm going to go back a little further. Let's go back here. And I want to get the right plug-in on the screen. That's not the right plug. So to do that, I have to do this. This is the plug that we're listening to on the lead vocal. And I'm sure what you all have figured out is that we can just get to the basics with the adjustment of the threshold and the gain. So if I wanted to start from scratch, I'm going to go to a default. And starting from scratch on her, I'll look for the lowest and highest points. The highest point, I'll grab with the threshold, then I'll bring up the gain on the lowest point. I think it's around. Okay, so that's too much. Okay, somewhere around there. And then I'll bring up the low stuff, and I'll either do it at 4-to-1 or at 100-to-1. But let's pick out the U. Somewhere around. So there it is. I've been doing this for a million years, so it's fast. But the loudest things and the softest things. And if you get that close, or I want to say right, but right is up to you, then the ratio control does something amazing. Is it adjusts the relative loudness around a center point, which we call the rotation point, a term that Thomas and I invented in the early TC electronics era. Rotation point here allows me to go from 100-to-1 to and it's in the ballpark. And that thing that you get, that I get with the ratio control is that if I have a mix and I get to the end of the mix and I've got to turn something up, I've got to reach for something, I'll reach for the ratio control instead of adjusting 1, 2, 3, 4 controls on the console. The level on the console, the threshold, maybe the ratio button on the 1176. Give me that 4-button thing. That this is, if you get these two right, then the ratio control is your friend. Now, I've started with kind of a standard timing setup, because if you get most of these right, this can happen later and you'll be in good shape. More about timing in a minute, but that's the basic setup. And I'm doing all this on a mono channel, so I don't have a loudness. These detectors are basically the same thing. What we looked at before, and we have here. So these two detectors, when I'm in mono, I only see the one. When I'm in multi-channel, I see both of them. Sometimes that's a little confusing. And in fact, there's a lot of stuff about this that's confusing. I'm going to try to get through all the weeds. Any questions so far? I was hoping to hear somebody say, well, why didn't you do it this other way? I guess I'm not going to hear that. That's all right. Moving on. This is a big thing. If we're in timing, if we're going to start talking about timing, I'm going to, this is somebody ringing me. Could it be? No. If we're going to start talking about timing, I'm going to bring up the drums. So I don't want to do that quite yet. But the idea in general with the timing control is This is something that I learned early on from David Blackmer. The basic heart of this work is something I learned from David Blackmer when he and I both did an AES paper in 1972. Yeah, I'm that old. In 1972, he delivered his paper on the DBX and the idea of a very simple RMS cell. And I didn't bring any drawings, but I can go look for them if you want. But the basic RMS converter that Dave Blackmer did is a work of genius, is a work of a complete knowledge of what a PN junction in a transistor will give you. Because his, you'll remember the Dave Blackmer VCA, for those of you who've seen it, it's just a little 4-transistor bridge, a VCA, 4 nonlinear parts. And that was the DBX VCA, which is the godfather of modern VCAs, although its topology is expanded 8 transistors. But I get off subject. He did a simple thing where he showed that RMS conversion gave you a better sense of loudness, which it would, because RMS is energy. RMS represents energy. The LA2A is related to the energy. The photocell is related to the energy of electroluminescent panel. And that's maybe why we all loved LA2As back in the day and still do. As soon as I can figure out how to do it, I'll get you an LA2A preset. By the way, this is another thing that we can do with presets, is you can share presets, and I can give you a big sort of package of my presets. And particularly this one I'm going to show you on piano, which is a heavy-handed piano preset that you may both learn something from and use in a rock and roll session if you got it. So the first thing that happened after we released this plug is everybody asked me, okay, that's nice and transparent, but what if I want to just squash something? And well, I sort of had to consider that that is a lot of our work, and it's my work as well. But there are some things, I don't want to get off subject just yet, but there are some things you can do with this to squash the living hell out of signal. And it's hard to find because this is a transparent device and you really have to crank the timing controls to get there. Couple of things. The soft knee, this thing right here, is absolutely essential if you're going to get where you want to go with any kind of device, if you're going to hear what you hope to hear. A lot of devices out there have a pretty hard knee, and it causes a click when your signal crosses that knee. Right from the early days of the 1176, there's a little click. There's a little transition that happens at threshold as the switching circuit turns on. It was the worst in the Spectrasonics limiter. If any of you have been infected by the Spectrasonics limiter, it was a snap when you went across threshold. Of course, if your signal waffled across threshold, it would just snap every time. It was horrible. I've got a whole Bill Dilley story that I won't tell. So we offer a whole bunch of soft knees, and for those of you that like the 8900, this is an unpublished thing, is 8900 curves start at -12 soft knee and go to the very deepest soft knee, where on an 8900, it really starts its attack at -60. And it has a big, slow curve up to 0. And I've got some example presets that show that if you're interested.
Yeah, one of my questions I had coming in was around the soft controls, and you already explained one thing about the extreme settings, or on the other side. But how do you think about the two different soft knees between the two? Between the composite and peak, like. How would you choose to set them? Yeah,
I choose to set the soft knee for different reasons on the peak. Okay, so what you'll see on the piano, let me go ahead and play the piano. It's great piano performance, and boy, do I trash it. So here is a, where the hell is it? Here it is. So there must be another window open. No, this is it. And I can turn it on and off. So this is a piano performance that I really like. And it's John Jarvis, and his voicing is orchestral. I mean, he's one of my favorite players. So I'm going to play, I'll get rid of the vocal for now, and here's just the piano. And I'll bypass it for a second. So I've got two setups. I've got sort of a leveling setup. Now keep in mind that I really love all the musicians in one room. So my recordings, maybe like some of you have some studio crosstalk, studio leakage. And that's music to me. So this piano has some leakage that I'd like to retain, a little bit of life in the recording. So it's an MS mic. It's my good C24 with Stephen Jarvis capsules in MS. And clearly there's more from the drums coming in, even though it's blanketed, double blanketed, there's still some room coming in. I'm using that. So when I come up with my compressor setting, I'm going to go back and listen to the drum room and match the drum room to it. So not important right now, but between my basic setup and crush, there's a lot of room. But mind you, I'm doing all of this in loudness, and I'll show you why. There's a centered piano image. Here's that same basic setup in discrete, and now in my speakers, that shifts enough to be annoying. And I find musicians find it annoying. Now, you may not hear it in a mix, but that's why you would choose to do loudness on a stereo piano. Maybe if you're crunching a synthesizer, you would want everything to be equal loudness. But that's not stereo anymore. What you're doing is pulling in the musician's choice of how to split his keyboard. That's okay. But here is where I would take I take the soft knee control and try to find the right threshold, including the soft knee control. So let's start here. And I would be, the way I started this was trying to adjust for the crosstalk in the room. So something like that. And I'm doing that on the discrete channel. And as you all have figured out so far, these apply to whatever you've got this set for. So, but you can hear very clearly how when he comes in with a little bit of the right hand right here. Goes off to one side. So this centers it again if I have all of these set the same. Let's set this down here for a second. And let's go back to the timing controls, because as good a time as any to tell you why I do exponent 2 and exponent 4. There's several professional papers that I follow. One of them that I found years ago was introduced to me by Susan Rogers, who I would consider one of the great references in the psychology of hearing. Why, and in particular, what we consider loud and not so loud, and what kinds of signals we consider loud and not so loud. And so what I've tried to do was to just do something and stay out of multiband. Let's just work with the dynamics of timbre. And in particular, for various sources, the width of what you would call their, for lack of a better term, their peaks. You know, when somebody slams their right hand down on the right-hand side of a piano, it's certainly a peak. But what does peak mean? Well, on a clave, peak means the first 5 milliseconds. On a snare drum, maybe 50 milliseconds. On a piano, there's a rich dynamic timbre that starts at under a millisecond and is important for 100 milliseconds, say. And what we're doing with these controls is integrating over that period and trying to figure out how loud that peak is and how loud the long term is. So that's why you would say, but in an acoustic piano like this, let's get the peak out of the way. Let's just do this. Let's do the simplicity, but let's do it in loudness. Get the peak out of the way, and let's just hear what timing does long term. So these loud things are certainly coming through, and come through even more as we integrate over almost a second. And here's where I start with suggestions for classical, for opera, and for symphonic, is to go for a very, very long term. Sorry, hit the wrong button. A very long term, like a 2-second integration period. Now we'll hear that first peak. I'm sorry to sound like a teacher here.
George, sorry to interrupt. I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but in the view I have of the plugin, I'm not seeing the expanded loudness panel. It's cutting off like at the discrete.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Obviously, it's on my view, but I didn't switch it. There's the expanded panel and a little bit of the EQ, but you know what? I really shouldn't have this. I'm going to trim this because I'm embarrassed that it's sticking over. Go here. Okay, so thank you so much for mentioning that.
George, what was that section to the right of the loudness weighting that?
There was an EQ behind it.
Oh.
And that's something that I didn't touch on with the vocal, is that I have, when I do a vocal, I have something before it and after it. And in some cases, it's symmetrical, like the one of the big regions of her vocal is around 200. So I bring it down going into the device and bring it up coming out. Same thing with the low end. And I didn't really do it yet, but same thing with this kind of brash thing that she does there. And it's like a side chain. But the only thing that we have right now on the side chain is the EBU filter, the EBU 77 filter. Now our next rev of the side chain of the DRC will have selectable low cutoffs. But at the time, what I was thinking for the low cutoffs as well as for peak capture, which is a whole nother kind of detector, is doing that with another plug. But getting back to this, if I may, if we go back to look at this piano, remember this was without any peak control. So we're on loudness, everybody's singing. So this is without the peak control. And we hear this one spot. And it's a good enough time to show you the peak override. And we're going to do it fast and hard, and it'll be ugly, but that's okay. But fast timing really digs into it. So that's the indicator's not fast enough, by the way, guys. I apologize. I've got a big excuse, but I fucking hate excuses. We can hear it digging in right here. And you hear it coming up. It's breathing heavily. So what we're doing between this and the knee is softening that and retaining a little bit of the die away. Without that, now it turns out this is too fast. We would normally not do that. Drop it down to something a little bit more orchestral friendly. And then and frankly, it's too much. So that comes back. This will come back. And now we'll dig into the peak. Crunch sounds like this. That's exponent 4. There's an important feature to doing the average at exponent 4. And it's because, and this is not well studied, it's because the ear changes its detection characteristic, its window, with loud, fast sounds. Think gunshots. Think a predator swooping in from behind your head. It's got to respond pretty quickly. And it looks like in this one paper, and maybe I should dial up or send out, it's pretty clear that that detection curve goes between energy, RMS, and peak loudness. And I'm calling it exponent 4. It's a curve that the experiments reveal. So this exponent 4 is a good place to start. It also sounds really crunchy on guitar if you turn it up, but that's another story. If we just listen to this, it's really capturing that peak. Listen to it. I mean, it's trashing the timbre, but that's not the point here. The point is that it's capturing the dynamic and that there's an in-between. that we can adjust with the soft knee. And the threshold. And also, you'll note that on this preset, I've got the look ahead set way ahead. If you just use the 7 sample, you miss that first 500 microseconds. So, of course, you have trouble using this on live sessions because this drives the Pro Tools. I mean, in Pro Tools, I think. I don't know. There's one or two that we're not able to control other DAWs, but in Pro Tools it adjusts the whole session. So you got to be pretty careful because if you have somebody wearing headphones, they'll bring it to your attention, as to put it kindly, throw something at you, maybe walk out. There are artists we've had to just take their headphones out, throw them at the wall, and walk out. I've covered a lot of ground. I feel like I should ask if there are any questions, guys.
Well, I mean, one of the other ones I had coming in was around the look ahead, and since you just touched on it, I mean, is there, the issues of latency aside, is there, if that wasn't a concern, would you generally set it very high, or how do you think about where you land on that?
I generally set it high for instruments like this, where the attack is complex and needs to be, I want to use the term averaged, but needs to be observed over a longer period. And in fact, if you really look at setting this up for real loudness over time, your basic window is 400 to 500 milliseconds. That's a half a second. So, you know, the temptation is to say, set it for however number of samples in a half second. And I stayed away from that because I didn't want to have to explain this. That first 400 or 500 milliseconds of the way the ear determines what is going on, what's the instrument, what's the signature of the attack, what's the nature of the timbre? Is it a predator? Is it a gunshot? It takes a while for the ear-brain system to figure that out. It does better when it has something stored in the deep brain that can, and very deep brain. And the deep brain takes over. If it's a gunshot and you've been shot at a lot of times, I haven't, but maybe you have. It gets faster with experience. But I get off topic. I haven't been threatened with a gun. I've been threatened with a knife. But that's another story. In the studio by a trumpet player who thought I was going to erase his last performance. Came at me with a bag in his hand. He had a knife inside. That's another.
Hanging out with the wrong musicians, George.
No, he was great. He's the high note in Shining Star. This guy could do that.
I stand corrected.
Super high note. No, I got out of that one. The thing with a long look ahead is you have to have it when you're doing true peak. When you're doing a true peak, you have to be out of the signal's way by the time the peak actually happens. All of the detection. If you don't want a square wave on that first attack, if you're doing a zero crossing, you have to have plenty of look ahead. But it's a rare case in dynamic control of an instrument, and it's a little bit more common in dynamic control of the piano, as we see here. We clearly hear the difference with gobs of look ahead. So that's not something we do. We leave that for the other guys. I use an old Steve Massey plug, L2007, because I just hate L2. And there's some others. FabFilter has one that's okay. I just haven't gotten used to it yet. So that's the answer to your question, Michael, if that works.
Yeah. What's the plugin you just mentioned, George?
Well, FabFilter has one. And I think Isotope, the Russian kid that Andres, that does the Isotope plugs, is an excellent DSP engineer. And I'll show him everything I do, and he shows me a lot of what he does. You got to remember that if you've been in the business for a while, you're going to get to know all of the other code writers. And Colin McDowell has been my best friend for some 45 years, since the very earliest days when we were battling Pro Tools and not getting much help. It was Colin McDowell that was driving a lot of that early development. So we all know each other and try not to steal from each other. And of course, that doesn't apply to Plugin Alliance. And the best coders in the business, eventually you'll meet the best coders in the business. And if you're smart, you'll listen to them. So guys like Tony Agnello, who did a lot of the original Eventide stuff, Peter Easty, a lot of these guys had ideas that we can't not consider. We have to consider. I mean, they did good work. Anybody need a break? Anybody else need a break? Mark just took off for the toilet.
Okay.
Or coffee. Mine is probably cold, but I used to go to gigs with a cup of coffee and leave it in the car and come out and be ice cold and perfect.
Okay. I have a question about the user interface. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Oh, very good. Very good. Because what confused me in the beginning when I first looked at your plugin was this, let's say, the average exponent. First, the word exponent, I couldn't make anything out of it. Then I had an attack time. Then I had a timing with this a value which I never saw before, decibel per second.
Okay, well, you saw that in the DBX 160 and subsequent DBX issues. And here's the story, and it's another thing I should have covered early on. This is a logarithmic device inside. The ear works logarithmic. The patent is how to extract RMS within a logarithmic domain. So it's RMS linear domain, because RMS is power. Power is equal to E times I, if you will. And that's a linear relationship. And to do that in the log domain is a nightmare. So the patent, and by the way, Dave Blackmer's way of doing that with a transdiode in the logarithmic domain, with the logarithmic domain multiplied times 2, because it's square, RMS, that's why we are in the logarithmic domain, is we want to square the signal and then take the square root of the signal. We want to square the average signal. So here's what's complicated is my business partner said, look, nobody understands exponent. Nobody understands timing. Let's call it something. Let's call it something else. Both of those controls are important to how you shape the envelope of your detector. The exponent is actually the exponent. When that's set to 2, when this control is set to 2, you really are getting RMS. That's real RMS. The methodology is that it's, and there's a word for it, that it's, that should be resetting. Why the fuck isn't that? You see all these problems. That should be resetting to 2.
We're not seeing your plugin anymore.
Yeah, I know. Here. That really is RMS. Exponent 2 is RMS, and we call it an exponent because it's an exponent.
Okay.
Exponent 4 is heretofore unheard of. And what we're suggesting is the ear doesn't necessarily hear peak. There's a little bit of averaging going on in the ear brain system. I think it's demonstrable from research data. And I'm taking a shot at a characteristic that I can extract from exponent 4 that models the ear. What it's called is a convergent approximation. The RMS is a convergent approximation. It's good, by the way, out to 4 decimal places. That's pretty fucking good. I'll take that. But we don't know what the ear really does, and it obviously is going to vary across the population between people. So what we do show is the attack time. Roughly the attack time is 60% of the signal. And that's derived from the control. Each of these controls, the average attack time of the exponent also, both of these vary with the timing, with the amount of current you put through. And what's significant here is that an attack time in between 100 and 200 milliseconds is enough for most signals to extract an average loudness. Not an average level, but an average loudness. You know what? I should see if I can get that up. Let me go over here. Give me a sec, guys. And that would be under research, temporal research. Here's, look, right for it. Temporal research. Fortunately, it's on the other computer. Okay. Here's the paper. It's on the wrong computer. So it's going to take me a minute to bring that over. But I'll show you one of the basic research tools that we use to determine loudness. And it'll take me a while to get to it. Somebody got a question while I'm busily goofing around?
Well, so if you're saying based on the timing and the exponent setting,
yeah,
like with the soft control, back to that, is that basically influencing how quickly the gain reduction is meeting its understanding of what the loudness is?
That's a fantastic question. Thank you. No, it doesn't. It just takes the result and takes that into a control. Let me get rid of this. Takes it into a control, the soft knee, that softens its effect. It's like a soft mix knob, softens its effect. But it does not change the timing. The timing is strictly that detector, that detector cell. Okay, so this is the mess that is my file system. I'm going to go to my other computer and just take a second. Let's look up documents, temporal research. And let's see if this is big enough. This is this is tempo versus phenoms. We studied this, and there's no test to be given. Aha, here we go. Response to various pulse widths. This is a paper that I use a lot. This is a René's paper from a while back, but this is the sensitivity to the ear to measured results, which are Poulsen and Peterson, and predicted results, which are, now this doesn't really tell you much, but this is represents the duration of a signal and the ear's sensitivity to it. And clearly, I mean, you can demonstrate for yourself with a pulsed sine wave, the ear hears quick signals. We'll call them quick because we don't know what to call pulses anymore. So the suggestion box is open. Signals in the 5 to around 200. It tapers off. But this represents an RMS relationship, a square relationship. This is flatter. And they're all normalized to what the peak value would be. And the peak value of any number of seconds would be 0. But this is where we get that curve. And I've got something that shows it a little bit better, I think. But that's the idea. That is the idea. What does this do? This is the, that's for the patent. What is this? That's more bullshit. This is the paper. Is the René's paper, and it's this was republished in 2009. But this is the guy. This was one of our main references for detection. Let me get this on screen so you can see it. Here, this is one of the main references for what difference between long-term loudness and short-term loudness, except it's not calibrated. It would be pretty hard to use. This is where I pulled this graph, and he goes a little further into things like the repetition rate of a pulse and the loudness. But the attack time, it looks damped. And it's kind of hard to derive a figure, a real figure for what's the actual attack time. But we do the best we can pulling this number out. What is the actual attack time? And again, we can get to fairly short values, the values that you would see in percussion instruments. And again, the guidance here was always transparency. So we'd like to retain the timbre character of a source if we possibly can. And those of you who mix by hand realize that that's a big job. But that's where it starts, is what happens, what does it sound like if we mix this by hand? I don't know what to tell you, but that's my reference for any kind of mixing is what do I get when I mix this by hand? What if I'm mixing an opera and I have my hand on the singer and my hand on the string master? What's the relationship? So I've done quite a bit of mixing, and we've learned that heard that the great mixers, Al Schmidt, spends most of his mixing time just adjusting levels, Take the level of the vocal and a level of the piano and get those right before you do anything, before you do EQ, before you do dynamics processing. Just understand the level of the instrument. I'm talking about one kind of mixing. This does not apply to urban. So my urban chops are different. I won't bother you with my urban chops, but I had to do all of the Alicia Keys listening with a whole nother ear. But then I'm changing the subject. Any questions? I'm sorry, I've dumbfounded you.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's veering off, but is there? I've been curious more about the release override to the extent that relates to what we're talking about. If you could speak to that.
That is exactly what I've been trying to avoid.
Okay.
But I can is this idea that it doesn't do enough. And so in response to that, gosh, what do I have on here that would demonstrate the release override? Let's see. Percussion should do it. Let me find it. The idea is obvious when whatever you do to the signal, if you need to release faster, but you don't like how it fucks up a signal, that's what this device is for. So let's take something I haven't done yet, and you get to see me flounder on something new. Let's take the percussion mic. And let's pull the dynamics off of everything else. That should do it. So we don't have a DRC on the percussion, but I'm going to put one on and show it to you. Here's a dynamics plug. That really should be a stereo channel. But I'm just going to play the one drum. So we'll just use the one control. And let's go here. So this is a what's it called? A tombe? What's it called? Every high school orchestra in the world bought one. What's it called? Tombe something. Got it written down somewhere? No. But it's just a little drum.
Clave?
No.
Oh.
What's it called? And why am I not hearing it? Because I've got it on a different sub. Give me a second to find this.
Sounds like a bongo.
Yeah, it's a lot like a bongo. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called. Okay, I'm going to put on my earphones for a sec.
You mean cajon?
Try it. I'm sorry?
Cajon?
No, it's not your typical. It's something became popular as a high school instrument because it was cheap. And let's see what we have here. Yeah, you're not.
Maybe a tambour.
Yeah, it's like a tambour, but that's the expensive version. Okay, I have to study my monitor path here. Oh, yeah, you guys are hearing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it. So I'm going to switch to another D to A. Just take a sec. I'm not here to sell gear, but I've just gotten a fabulous D to A that I like a lot.
Tell us.
Okay, that's good enough. So if we search for the peak, I'll just crank this. We have a couple of choices. We can.
Should we see the plugin?
Oh yeah, Sorry. That is the point of all this, isn't it? Sorry. Okay, so here is, it's a stereo instrument, and I haven't gotten the stereo set up yet, but it will be useful for me to do so in a moment. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a second. I'm going to save the session for the inevitable crash. And I'm going to set up a stereo plug. Forgive me for not showing you my screen on this. Set up a stereo aux.
We're actually seeing it. If one chooses the active speaker view, it's a nice big picture.
Oh, great. Are you seeing it? Here's my active. Are you seeing it? Wow. And you learn something every day. Huh. Cool. Okay. Didn't know that. So we're going to move these to another track and assign it to, this was a 5-1 mix. And we're going to assign it to the 5-1 sub. And I want to pick the right sub, and it's sub 1. We're going to move this to sub 1. I should have thought of this. To sub bus 1. And do we hear it? No, because I haven't moved the sound sample yet. Here is the sample. And we've got to pick the whole track with all the edits. By the way I started recording, when I had this amazing resource, this studio at Blackbird, I tried to make a point of doing sessions with everybody in the same room. And there are a lot of musicians that can't deal with it, but I didn't hire them. Okay, I'm going to save that. But this will show you the stereo device. So let's get rid of that. And let's show you the stereo device. So here's the native plugin in stereo. Now we have great, we have fuck all. Why not? Let's go to here. Okay, and I guess I've kind of faked a tuba, so there's a deeper sound on the right. But if we, let's stay in loudness for a minute. If I weren't in loudness, I'd have that's quite different. That's not the same thing as the stereo sum of the image. At any rate, so I'm going to see what a super I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong knob. What a super fast attack gives me.
We aren't seeing the loudness.
Of
view.
course you're not. Fuck me. Sorry, excuse me. There it is. I'm not going to make excuses, but there's so many controls in front of me. It's confusing. So here's the loudness view. It's not the acoustic piano. It is the, let's make sure we get this up. It is this. The loudness view is that. Okay. So what you heard before was when I moved from this to this and crank the threshold. And what this is doing, I don't know. Oh, it's still stuck here. All right, so we're still on this when we want to be on that. So if I've got this turned up loudly enough, you'll hear the two control positions, giving you an entirely different impression of the drum. This is.
I could use more. I could use more drum. I don't know.
You need more level.
Yeah.
Me too. Your voice is like 70%, and the drums are like 30%.
I've got just the thing. How about I just talk softly?
Okay.
Okay, here's. Okay, I never, hate to make excuses, but I never had a real balance on this. And there's auto-fucking-mation. Excuse me. Let's do this. There you go. Okay, this is centered. And this is discrete, so the center is moving. Is that obvious enough? Do you hear that? So what we were going to do was, let's try to get a sound, but we're going to use loudness to do it. And we're going to go to a little different setup. So
So that's starting to sound kind of like a K-hun to me.
like a what?
Like a K-hun, K-C-A-J-O-N. Were they?
Yeah, it sounds like that, but it's another name. I have to get Vinny to give me the name of it. By the way, this is really important in my way of recording, and you don't have to do anything but just note how I record. Is I find a guy who's also a vocalist, and his job is to listen to the vocal and establish the groove. And it moves throughout the song. The chorus, it picks up a little bit. The verses settle back. The turnarounds settle back a little bit. But everybody is following this drummer. You mentioned Earth, Wind, and Fire. If you listen to September, and I've got the master here, if you want to hear it, I hope you don't. You'll hear that Freddie is all over the map. The tempo is up and down through the whole song. And you never do it. And it just feels however it feels, but there's a feel to the tempo that matches the song better than a drum machine. Go figure. I'm off on a tangent, but the idea is that he's really important. Now, it's not as important that we hear him loud, but it was important in the session for the other musicians to hear him, so that they can find a pocket, a real pocket. And by the way, not to sell the studio. But that's the other thing about this studio is due to the diffusion, the extraordinary diffusion, it sounds the same wherever you are listening, wherever you are in the room. It sounds exactly the same. My friend Nico Bolas did a Neil Young track in there. He had 4 or 5 cameras in different spots. And one thing he noticed when he was editing it together is all the cameras had the same sound. The room sound was exactly the same, even in the corners in the on the cameras. So, I mean, that's just an aside. But this idea of the loudness of that instrument and where it is in the room, and there's probably something better. You know what's better is a guitar. So I could try to find a guitar if you're still interested and show you what the release override does. But in short, the release override takes the sensitivity is, and I originally called this reverse hysteresis. And boy, for 40 years, I've got nothing but shit about hysteresis. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, you guys know about the hysteresis curve for magnetics. That's hysteresis. It has a different characteristic going down than it has going up. It's hysteresis. It's in all kinds of systems. Servos have hysteresis or anticipate hysteresis. But I couldn't, nobody let me call it hysteresis, but that's what it is. And the sensitivity is the reverse level. It's how far you're dropping from average. And the speed is how far you're dropping in within that window. So this works on things like guitars, where you have a guitar note that you want to kind of level, but when it goes away, you want to reset the detectors. And that's what it does. It resets the detectors with a certain curve. And that's the speed. So that's a complicated answer to a simple question.
I think the video that you had on YouTube explained it very well. You showed it with a singer and explained the release override.
Good.
With the soul singer. I thought I got it there.
I should just play that video instead of talking. Sorry. But if you could, do me a favor, and if you could send me that, I mean, I've got shit sprinkled all over the internet, but if you could find the name of that video, Andrew, who has joined us, would love to know what that is.
No problem.
Nice to see you, Andrew. Thanks for coming on. Andrew, I don't know whether you've used sessionwire before, but you'll open the mixer and you'll have an array of panels in the mixer where you can play around with your level and the high quality stream.
Okay.
So that's kind of release override. Other topics I wanted to hit. Does anybody have any other general questions? I mean, I kind of like to avoid talking about why we do iLok because it should be pretty obvious. And I sure don't want to talk about analog versus digital, but this is something that I could not do in analog. I've been thinking about how to do this for years, but until recently, I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I like digital. I like digital because at very high rates and resolutions, it sounds like better analog to me. I mean, I did my first 15 years in analog, 20 years in analog. So I know what that sounds like. I know what the benefits of analog are. I know what I heard and felt. And I hit a wall where I couldn't do anything more with it. So that's why I'm off on a tear to get better digital. And the best digital is being denied us because we don't have bandwidth to our to our links. I mean, we've heard, if you know Morton Lindbergh's work, it's the most extraordinary recording and visceral, and always finds its way to my heart. And that's what I'd like to get on my work is to make this stuff transparent. If I'm gonna make a volume adjustment, I'd love to make it transparent. It's a big if, but for popular music, I'm going to make a broad statement that you have to consider automatic adjustment if you can't take the time to do it by hand. Al Schmidt usually did it all by hand. I don't think everybody has that time to do it by hand. I'm off on a tangent, guys. Reel me in.
Well, you had mentioned, I mean, it's kind of contrary to what you were just talking about, but you had mentioned drums and going to a drum example with some more extreme settings.
Yep, let's do it. So I'm going to think that we want to do that with a vocal. So let me see how I can get this set up. Here's our whole mix with the last couple of things that we settle on. We settle on a piano sound. So let's listen to the whole mix. This is too loud. Let me know. That sounds crushed.
At that volume, I think your headphones are feeding back into the mic. We're getting a little bit of slap.
Okay, let me pull that way back. These are, by the way, really interesting phones. These are the new Audio-Technicas. And I don't know whether it's been released yet. It's the R70. And I switch between these and I'm sure there are a lot of guys that use Audis. I use LCD3s and have for years for mixing. And I've got a sub over there that I'll turn on when I need to add low end to the LCD3s. But these have a separation in the mid-range. I'm not trying to sell Audio-Technica, but have a separation in the mid-range that is extraordinary. And I'm listening to it. This is the new John LeGroux converter. It's called Immersive.
And what'd you say? It's an RC70?
These are called, I'm not trying to sell them. These are ATH R70X. And they may not be out there. They may be out there. I don't know. But on the John LeGroux, the new John LeGroux converter, and I compared this to my DCS, and I would take this every time. I'm not trying to sell them because they're too expensive. But again, the accuracy of stuff happening in the mid-range is absolutely extraordinary. What I'm hearing, I hear on open backs. So that's why it was feeding into the mic. If I want to do closed backs, you know what? Let's do closed backs. So closed backs, I go to my, that's fired. This is hired, to my etymologic research ER4s. You guys know etymologic research, right? And I actually did this recording on etymologic research in the room in Blackbird Studio C, and I was listening to this at the same time. Let me see if these. Now, the only problem with this is I've got to keep my eye on the meters over there so I can see who's talking, because this gets the talking out. But let me get a sound on the drums, and I'll be right back.
George, you muted right now.
Yeah, now I'm on. Okay, I'm going to turn on my mic for a second, and this shouldn't get into the mic, but I'm going to play just the drum.
You're still muted, George.
Can you hear me now? So what I've got, okay, I see what's going on. I have I'm going to disable the automatic gain. So I'm sorry, my rant was as follows. This thing with how to squash drums is something I learned from Phil Collins, engineer, many years ago, and then Bob Clearmountain picked it up. But Bill Schnee calls the technique, Clearmountain's technique, is this uncanny, maybe magical ability to capture the sound of a snare drum hitting an SSL compressor, which was Bob Clearmountain's sound on a lot of those records, is a squashed drum with an SSL compressor. I hate them, so I can't emulate them yet. If you guys really want an SSL compressor, I'll try to do it for you, but I'd like to avoid it. But this is what that drum sound was. I mean, just to bring you up to date on the bullshit we had to do, is that was toms and snare hitting a bus that hit the toms and the snare with a very fast release. But the sound was a completely distorted sound. It went through an SSL 4K, mic pre on a 4K, and limiting SSL channel limiter into an 1176, crushed to death, max everything, 4 buttons, the whole thing, back into the console, and gated with this drum bus, which was an attack bus with a very fast expander, a gate, the SSL gate. And so the combination of this extraordinary compression that sounded like a rectangular signal, I call it goosh, and then gated, that was the in-the-air drum sound. And we all had to copy it because when it came out, everybody wanted the in-the-air drum sound without the in-the-air drummer, which was Phil, who tragically got a back operation and has been incapacitated. He's in a wheelchair. Anyway, trying to get close to that sound was something that we had to do in the 80s. But it's kind of stuck in our toolkit, a little bit of that. The idea of separating sounds out and compressing them. And it's for sure an acquired taste, but it's something we had to do. So here's a snare drum. And maybe it'll even play. No, because I'm away from the playlist. Here, I got to do this, and then it'll play. So that's just the drum. That is just the drum. And what we're going to do is, and everybody can see that, am I right? Yeah, if I do this. That didn't work. And if we do this. By the way, this program is OBS, or Open Broadcaster, and it's pretty good, but it's free, and so the support is as in any free plugin. So here's a drum where a lot of the compression is with the C60. C60 is a small diaphragm mic, great mic. It's an AKG diaphragm, small, and AC 701 tube. And you put it right next to a snare drum, and that's tube saturation. There you go. That's the sound. And we're going to make the most of it. So start here. I'm serious. That's the sound. I'm not kidding. But what we did with that is we opened up the timing. That's going to crank the release. And let's and we're just trying to get that attack transit. So we're going to okay, so you hear that snap, that snap at the beginning of the drum? You listen to records that we all made in the 80s and 90s, and we have mixed it with the snare drum crushed, and then at some point we turn the attack down on that signal. So we hear this little tick come through, and we'll hear it better in context, but here you hear the difference between this and this. That little attack, you really hear it when you've got it in a mix. So let me dial it up in the mix, and we have compared to that's subtle, but most of what we've been doing for 50 years has been subtle enhancements of stuff that sounded fine 50 years ago, and we're just trying to make it better. We're making it better, but here's one of the techniques that you take on certain instruments where you want to bring up the tail and retain the attack and control the tail to some degree.
George, real quick, it seems like we switched over to the piano instance of the plugin.
Actually, no, we didn't. This is still.
Oh, there we go.
A second. You know what? You're right. You're right. It's because I've got the fucking piano showing. All right. You're right. You're right. You're right. But I am adjusting what I think I'm adjusting. I mean, believe me, take it from a guy that fools himself a lot and is convinced that it sounds better. We were adjusting the right things. And I hear it on the drum. We see it on my view, I see it on the expanded view, but we're hearing it on the drums. And we can tell because if I do this, it's certainly that we're adjusting what we're thinking. You know, you guys are engineers, and you may have had this experience where you're comping something. Maybe you're comping vocals, and you've got 5, 6 vocals, and you're marking words that are better in each pass, and you do a couple passes, and they all sound the same, and then you realize you're hitting the wrong switch, and they all are the same, and you're making a distinction between words and phrases that are exactly the same for hours on end. And it's pretty embarrassing. And I generally recommend to students that they tell the truth and come clean, as I had to do. But yeah, we do that sometimes. We don't know what we're listening to.
Is this an example where you would purposely keep the look ahead low in this kind of scenario? Or
I think you would keep the look ahead low, but you should be able to lengthen it at least. Well, let's see what it sounds like. So we hear that pop on the top of the snare. We can exaggerate that pop a little bit. Let's take that off. There you go. So I just need more of that drum. Yeah, the look ahead basically takes that away. We hear it there. Yeah. So I mean, there are reasons to use the look ahead and reasons not to. Bass guitar, we don't have this kind of bass guitar, but if you have a bass guitar played with a pick, there's something that you need to be very careful about the look ahead and about the attack of the bass. These are good questions. I appreciate it. Now, I know we don't do much with acoustic music in the studio anymore, but we're hoping. We're ever hopeful. And we get the opportunity to work with great musicians, and on occasion, the opportunity to work with great musicians together in the same place at the same time in a recording studio. That has changed dramatically, as you know. So most of what I think we are going to have to do is just adapt. And generally what we tell students is you're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to say yes to every job. You know, I'm veering off into career, and I don't know whether you need to hear this again because all of us have experienced it. It's really hard to get paid to do what we do and to do what we do best and to have it be, I'll use the word appreciated, but you know, that's a flexible situation. Let's see what we haven't hit. Certain things like forwards and backwards compatibility. For those of you that had the old DRC and DSP, we had to abandon the compatibility with the original DRC. But if you take a picture of what you're doing with this DRC and dial it into the old DRC, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same detector. You may not have that, and we don't have a DSP engine yet. You may have heard, we have heard, that Pro Tools is studying the next generation of DSP because they've got certain consoles. I mean, maybe we've worked on venues. I mean, we have to adapt to a venue, so a Pro Tools venue. So Pro Tools is going to stay in the DSP business to some extent, perhaps limited. But the thing for latency is to get this plugin into DSP. Right now, I'm doing that with the hybrid setup on Pro Tools. But latency is always our limiting factor. So for live performance, what we can do for latency is at 96K, we can, if you don't have a lot of things in line in a strip with latency, you can give a vocalist a 1 to 2 millisecond talk much, 1 to 2 millisecond latency into the phones where they can sing. As we know, it's best if you can get it down to 500 microseconds, but boy, that's a challenge. You can do it at 192.
So there are plans to do an AAX DSP version of this?
Oh, could you say that again?
You do have a plan to put out an AAX DSP version of this?
Absolutely, and we've got one. It just doesn't work in multi-channel yet. So the trick will get it to be the same thing as we see here in multi-channel. The problem with doing DSP with the current chip, the TI chip, is that the powers at DigiDesign chose a processor with just a tiny bit of RAM. So we can't do any look ahead. And the old hybrid mode where we could do some processing in DSP and some processing in native, the so-called hybrid mode of yore, disappeared, and the hybrid mode, the new hybrid mode, doesn't allow you to share resources between DSP and native. Now, no doubt, if we had that, we could have any length of look ahead, because we go to native resource for the look ahead and then back to DSP for the processing. We don't have that. So the new chip that they're looking at, and you didn't hear it from me, has gobs more RAM. And we'd be able to do this, but we don't know how fast they will implement it. And at the rate that they're firing people, it's possible that they won't, that they'll just choose not to because they don't have the resources. It's a funny company. We've been on that platform for a long time, going on 25 years. So we're experienced in the Pro Tools arena. But yeah, and there's some things that we haven't got quite right. One of the big users of our EQ plug has pointed out repeatedly that the what is in effect our toolbox called the Juice toolbox now into Juice 8 isn't implemented properly on Pyramix, and they've written their own implementation, and it's wrong. So we have little programming tasks to do for Pyramix users. And we like Pyramix. We like Pyramix users because it's mostly classical and we learn a lot from them. And we have Pyramix users that use the VST3 plug on a regular basis. And it sounds pretty good. I did bring the latest project that I'm working on by this amazing guitar player, but it's at 192K and it's a bit of a slog to get up a 192 session. And I don't know whether it'll really demonstrate anything to you. And I don't know how sessionwire works with the 192 input. And I would suspect it does not work as well as just listening to it at 192.
I see there's a question from Adrian in the chat, just on the flag there.
Oh, I don't have the chat up. Sorry about that. Adrian, do you want to turn on and tell me what you got?
They mentioned that their English is bad. That's why they were.
Oh, that's okay. That's
yeah.
okay. all of my language. I lived in France for years and did sessions in bad French. So I mean, I'm used to people accepting my bad English, so I accept bad anything. The key, well, let's listen to it. The snare sample with a different knee has a different die-away. We listen to the die-away, and we'll hear a difference in the die-away. Let me see if that's clear. So I've got the snare turned up a bit. That's kind of wait a second. My cursor just froze, and that was almost let me take a second and save. We had a near crash. God. Is it going to be a crash? Maybe not today. Okay, let's save a branch. And then we're at least saved. Okay, so here's, I got to put my ears in. And let's solo it first. And speed it up. Well, you've got to have this really sped up before you hear a big difference. I think so. That's, and are we sure? Yep. Yeah, you hear a big difference in the die-away. And it's a reason to use the control or to be knowledgeable in the control. And in the session, yeah, it brings the die-away forward. We don't have quite the right timing to get the pop on the snare, but you know, you pick and choose. But it does it, and and the challenge I've had is responding to people that want it to sound like an SSL, because it doesn't sound like an SSL. I don't want it to sound like an SSL. I don't think they want it to sound like an SSL. Just want to be sure they can get back to the thing that was on their last hit record. Well, there are no hit records anymore, so
surely there's enough SSL plugin type plugins out there for them to get what they want.
I'm sure that you could put an SSL plugin for the few times you need an SSL, and it'll work out just fine. By the way, that's something worth mentioning is if you can level this. I don't know how many of you are forced to use Decapitator, but for certain records, you really have to do some damage that we didn't get in the business for, but that's the gig. And so to get into either Decapitator, and Tony Agnello has a good one out too, even though it has a good one, I forget what the name of it is. But if you could level what you go into this device with, if you can get your source into the ballpark where you have more of an even-handed application of whatever that I work with Randy Newman, and Randy Newman has a way of describing it to a musician that is just great. You know, he'll walk up to a guy and say, or to an engineer, his longtime engineer, Frank Wolf, he'd say, Frank, play that thing, and it'd be fucked up. He'd say, Frank, you've done it again. You've captured that shitty sound. You know, you are the master of that shitty sound. I don't know how you do it. That shitty sound. It just keeps repeating it until, you know, you're in tears. if you're getting it. But that shitty sound, people like that shitty sound, and the decapitator does it particularly well. But it varies with the attack, with what you bring into it. So if you can level what you send to it somewhat, you get at least the same effect across your mix. The same amount of shit.
Would that logic, I guess, apply even in this snare drum case? Let's say you're working with less talented musicians that are less consistent. Would you put two instances of the DRC, one that's like kind of leveling it more or less, and then you go for like the SSL quote unquote with the second one, I guess?
I have done that on occasion. Yeah, on occasion, is try to get the leveling sound nailed and not using the peak override all that much. But on the second device, really laying it on. I've done that. I don't do that much anymore with I'd want to call it what we used to call urban contemporary. Now it's hip hop, and sounds are a lot different. I've got a couple of guys that are using this in hip hop, and I'm waiting to get back their settings. And when I get back their settings, I'll pass it on to you. Hip hop settings. Boy, it's a whole nother thing. Okay, how are we doing for time? Boy, I'm way over. Cool. Any other thing that we have to chase down? Anything you can think of? No, I'm not way over. I'm way over because this is in another time zone. Okay, never mind.
Just one question here from Berlin. Why did you not to do a blend control or a mixer?
I'm going to suggest that the ratio control, if set up correctly, does the same thing as a mix control. That, as we know, goes around the device, the plug, and goes from 100% plug to 0% plug. In the interest of simplifying the front panel, which is already a fucking mess, you've got to admit, I thought that it would be best to show how the ratio control kind of does that same thing. Because what the ratio control actually is a control on the output of all of the detectors. If the ratio control went to 0 or 1 to 1, it goes to 1.2 to 1. But if it went to 1 to 1, and we could figure out the metering because it wouldn't drive the meter correctly. If it went to 1 to 1, that would be exactly the same as a ratio control without the output control adjust, or close enough to the ratio control.
Good to know.
Sorry?
Good to know. Yeah, thanks.
Guys, could I take a washroom break for a second? I've been up since 3 and I've drunk a lot of coffee. So I would give us all, if you want to come back to this, that's fine. I'm here for you. And if you want to sign off, that's fine too. This has really been what I'd hoped it would be. But if you could give me a washroom break, I'd appreciate it. Everybody okay with that? Okay, I'll be right back. Okay. So again, if you got to go do something else, I understand completely. I think I've covered as much as I had on my list, though. You let me know if there's something I didn't hit. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it. I think that's it. Outside of just getting a bunch of, I want to get a bunch of presets together and send them out. So you guys will be on the list.
Hey, George, that would be awesome. I'm wondering, I mean, I basically know what the 1770 filter is doing, and when I load this plugin, I just kind of load it and turn dials and spin everything around until I like something. But could you maybe talk just a little bit about the 1770 filter?
Well, it's useful. Should we wait until one or two guys come back and maybe? I don't know whether Adrian's still on. He may have bailed out. But the I could repeat it when Mark comes back. There he is. So the 1770 filter. So we got this gig remixing a friend of mine named Eric Schilling, who I know from the 5-1 days. And I got the gig. Actually, I got the gig and I didn't have enough time to do it. Passed it on to Eric Schilling. And he and I really had to debug Atmos because the gig was doing a remix and remaster of all of Alicia Keys' catalog in immersive, tall order, and did a couple of mixes for the new record, which was I think Underdog was my favorite Alicia Keys mix, and then we went back in the catalog. Well, very quickly. We had a lot of Dolby problems to fix, more than they would admit to, way more than they'd admit to. In fact, I'd have to go so far as to say that they weren't very helpful. And we had to invent a lot of things and wait for the fixes. But one of the things that we had to do was delay compensation because it was a mess between Pro Tools and Atmos. A mess, and if you used, I used a plug that just about took 10 years off my life because every time I started playing, every time I transferred, it would pick a different delay compensation called Spat Revolution, and it was great for creating that near ambience, just great. But I mean, the delay compensation was crazy, and I get off subject. But at any rate, the thing was loudness. We had to put out something. We had to understand what loudness was in the immersive domain, and loudness in the immersive domain hadn't been satisfied by, and still isn't satisfied by, any of the plugs out there. And there's a PSP plug, and it's okay. I like the guys. They're nice guys, but it doesn't do what I hear, which is exactly what the DRC3 does, is that does all 16 channels across this dynamic range. Whew, that's a tall order. That was a challenge. And we designed it for 16 channels. If you look on old versions that snuck out, it has 16 channels. So we could do several subs in Pro Tools. We could actually do them all if we could reach them. But we had to do loudness across all of the channels. And I started working on this variation of the DRC2 that did loudness. And that's where our That's our specialized market is motion picture, because they have to have subs. We just did one of the mixers that we work with. He's a good guy and a great mixer. Did Alien Romulus, and I got the stems from it and did a study on what to do for motion picture across the stem, and it's all about loudness, and that's all about BS 1770, because you start with that. You start with that roll off, that 80 hertz roll off, and it hasn't changed. A lot of things have changed, but that hasn't changed. Is that detector works pretty well for a lot of other things. As I said, we're going to have an expanded version of sidechain filters so that you can get 60, 80, 120, probably just 18 dB per octave cutoffs. So that's a long answer to a perfectly good question. That's all I see at the chat window. So you guys get everything. This is such a pleasure when you guys figure this stuff out on your own. I learn a lot from that. And I should have invited John England, and I wish I'd. So I'm sorry, who said they were going to do a video? Was it right, Steve? You were going to do a screenshot or something.
Yeah, I've been capturing the video. It should have caught the audio as well.
Great.
But you know how these things can sometimes be.
I do know how these things are. That was one of my big mistakes is for a live show is accidentally hitting destructive erase in the middle of a live show, in the middle of one act of a live show. Boy, have I made some mistakes. We used to talk about getting together and talking about our mistakes because they're more interesting than anything else. And we finally did get together with a bunch of us at an AS and talked about the worst mistakes we made in audio. And that was one of them when I accidentally, I was doing too much and I accidentally stopped a recording in the middle of a performance without a backup. For my wife's band. Was not good.
I guess she wasn't the one to come at you with a knife.
No, I was the one to commit Harry-Carry. But the other mistake that was great was Peter Easty said his biggest mistake, I don't know whether you remember the Oxford Digital Console. I bought 3 of them and worked on the development. And it was a real heartbreaker when we had to finally dump it. A few weeks ago, my wife needed space in the basement. We finally dumped the Oxford Digital, and it's a beautiful piece of work that couldn't continue because it didn't have enough DSP, and they didn't have any way of moving. They didn't have any way of anticipating the increase in DSP availability. They didn't have any way of moving their custom algorithms over to, say, a Mac. And the Mac could have done all of the DSP in an Oxford console 2 or 3 times over. But that was an ergonomic. That was an ergonomic console. And I say, for any of you who touch the faders, they're the best faders in the world. They're Panasonic moving coil faders with samarium cobalt magnets. And they're just the best faders ever. And of course, they were too expensive. Everything about the board was too expensive. But my point was, Peter Easty said, my biggest mistake, and this was a 200 million pound mistake, approximately, was designing software and hardware independently and imagining they would come together flawlessly. 200 mil. Whew. That's a big mistake.
Isn't that where the Sonox plugins come from originally?
It is, yeah. And I was part of those plugins for a while. and it was an added option. We just gave it to them in the end. But I spent months working on EQ and dynamics with Paul Frindle, if you guys know Paul Frindle.
You had that you can buy your mod for the Sonox EQ, right?
Yeah. And it was a good EQ, and that was the best case to use extended arithmetic, because that was a 32-bit engine. And that's when we absolutely decided that we had to go double precision in the EQ. And to this day, it sounds incrementally better than fixed point EQs. I don't want to get into it, but we also use a different algorithm that we discovered in a DSP paper. Dwayne Wise and I discovered in the 80s. Is the form factor of our digital filter is significantly different than direct form 2 and the way most EQs sound. I'm sorry, I'm raving on, but any other questions about any other feature requests for the DRC? Now's your shot.
There's one more in the chat that just came through.
Okay. Wow. I had a lot of Ampex machines, and you'll recall I had the first couple ATR 124s, and it was by far the best sounding machine we could find. It was really fucked up, though. I did a live weather report concert, and the band and I are listening after the show, and in the middle of a playback, the speed starts changing. And it's going up, which means the recording is slowing down, and Solomon, of course, goes nuts. So it's changing, you know. So I had to build a resolver that would take the SMPTE track and resolve it to the clock stream to correct the speed of the multi-track. But there were a lot of problems with that machine. During a Fleetwood Mac session, in the middle of a Fleetwood Mac session, of course, the band is sitting around just getting fucked up. And in the middle of the session, my assistant Sharon is rewinding the tape, and suddenly it stops. And both reel motors lock into fast speed, opposite directions, and dump the tape on the floor. And a fireball comes out of the heatsink in the front of the machine. This big heatsink with all the power MOSFETs. That was spectacular, and we recovered the tape. But
what album was that?
That was post-Tusk.
Right.
The record post-Tusk. I wasn't the main engineer, but it was post-Tusk. And it was in my studio. They had moved from the village to my studio. But I don't remember anything. The crystal ball gets very cloudy in those days. I'm sure you can imagine why.
No, George, tell us.
And although I've got to tell you, I'm on a pain drug right now. That's the closest to. That's the closest thing to. To heroin that I can imagine, and it's called Lyrica, and it really kills nerve pain. But I'm going to have a back operation in a couple weeks, so I've got to get used to pain medication. From lifting road cases in the 60s, 70s, 80s. That's where it started. I don't know how I've gotten off on this, but going back to the question of the rotation point, it all depends on what you consider to be that thing that analog tape does. And boy, is it hard to model. And I don't think anybody's gotten it exactly right, but And if you did, there would be differences between tape machines. But what I hear is different, is way different than clipping. So anybody that tries to do it with a clipper is way off. And the closest I've heard is doing it with a higher, I'll use the term exponent. And does it glue? Yeah, it seems to. You got to use a lot of it though, and it's not the reason that you got a DRC2 in the first place was to be transparent. You have doubts as to whether this is transparent. I can show you on lead vocal, and I'll let that be the last rave of the day. Here, I'm going to put this on. Let's listen to her. So this is on her. By the way, she is an extraordinary singer. Dawn is Anne Murray's daughter. For those of you that remember Anne Murray. Why is it turning this off? I've got to turn something down in here. Okay. Is it this? Let's go here. Let's find a vocal. Let's do here. And I'm going to show you her DRC, which is here. And you know what? I'm also going to put up what I do before and after. So that's going to be here. It doesn't work anymore. So let's do here. Okay, and this is pre-EQ. Here's pre-EQ and post-EQ, pre-compressed and post-compressed. They have been out up until now, but I may turn those on, and you'll be aware of them doing something. So that's what we ended up with. I'm sorry, that's the piano. This is the DRC. So what we're going to do is use an extraordinary amount of gouache. Of course it's not working. I see why. Let's get rid of that. And I need to turn on my monitor. I think that'd be. So one thing we're going to need is a roll-off. So here's going to be our roll-off. I'm going to save that. It's on bypass. Save what we've got. Snap buffer. That's just what I need. Do you dare me to love you? And you're hiding where heart. Today let's take some chances. Cause it all flies. Okay, and we're going to use this other kind of filter. And that's just what I need. Do you dare me to love you? And you're higher where heart. You say let's take some chances. Cause it all flies. So it's that's too much, but that's okay. That's just what I need. Let's not do it there. Let's do it here. Okay, that's extreme. And the different, why does this go? Oh, yeah, we do want that out. So the difference is this. And we're getting rid of that one thing in particular, the blare in the mid-range. We're getting rid of. There's still too much highs. I don't remember that much highs, but so okay, that's what I remember through the haze of history. That's more of an analog thing, but it's all about not being able to match that low end. You know, how do you match that low end of a magnetic circuit? And this isn't doing that because it's not bidirectional. It's not symmetrical. Attacks are not symmetrical with attacks of an individual wave. The shape of an individual waveform would be asymmetrical if it's modeling the magnetic circuit. But a great question. I have to brag about this. This may be a preset. A shitty tape machine preset. I wish I got the sales that Andrew Sheps got, but probably not. But a good question, and the answer to this and any other thing, and any other challenge that we face in the studio is the patience that you're testing of the people that are in the room with you, the musicians or the producer. If you're in with a producer, you're always challenged with somebody who's telling you that it's got to be louder or has an example. I mean, hopefully if you're trying to copy something, you'll get an example of what you're doing so you can do an A/B test. Or kind of an A/B test. This is great, guys, but I know I'm right on the borderline of boring you to death. So I think if there are no other questions, and you can always ask me something offline, you've got my email address, and let me know what I can do to help.
George, this was incredibly generous of you. Thank you for your time on all this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
It is sincerely my pleasure. And if you have any thoughts or questions post this discussion, just let me know and I'll get back to you.
Great.
Thank you.
Assuming I haven't messed this up, George, I will email you the link so you can share it with.
That'd be great.
Everyone.
I'm going to research what's actually recorded when I press record in sessionwire, and I'll let you know.
Cool.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Bye,
it.
everyone.
We run
Bye.
into each other in the studio. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.